Even was a big deal in our past, of course, race relations. Even though we have challenges, and they remain today, it's easy to forget how far we've come as a country. And it's much thanks to two great men who stepped up at the right time to move our nation forward at our most difficult time and through the Civil War. These two men not only brought us through the Civil War, but made us a more perfect union at the end of it. Frederick Douglass, Abraham Lincoln, and their battle to save America's soul. Watch. The American Civil War. Over 600,000 would die over the course of 4 years. For the United States to survive, then reunify, and become for the first time a nation free for all, they would need extraordinary leaders. Two emerged above the rest: Abraham Lincoln, the president; Frederick Douglass, the freedom fighter. Together, they would make America a more perfect union.
America has been blessed to have the right people at the right time.
I mean, think back to those days in the Civil War where brothers literally fought blood brothers. Fathers fought their kids because they wanted the Declaration of Independence and this notion that all men were created equal to be real.
In Abraham Lincoln, you had a person with the odds stacked against him. Bill, how can a young man born to illiterate parents in abject poverty with only 1 year of formal education emerge as one of America's perhaps best presidents who would lead us through a war and emancipate all enslaved people?
Well, he was an amazing person. I guess today we'd call him gifted. He had a vision. He had ambition.
As tough as Abraham Lincoln's first 14 years were, Frederick Douglass had it a whole lot worse. He was born a slave. He had to escape to establish his freedom, but he wasn't satisfied with that. He would want freedom for himself and freedom for all. Once free from bondage, Douglass would relentlessly continue his self-education, be mentored by esteemed abolitionists, write a best-selling biography, start a newspaper, and be a lecturer known around the world. As flawed as America was for the African American, he didn't want another country.
He wanted to make his stand here, almost in biblical terms. He saw the promise of America, which was hard to do when you're being beaten. So Douglass's gift was he never let the slave owners own him.
In the 1850s, as Douglass and Lincoln began to rise in stature, miles apart, America was coming apart. The North and South were diverging on the issue of slavery. The status quo would not stand, paving the way for the emergence of a new party, the Republican Party, seizing the opportunity a one-term congressman, lawyer from the Midwest, Abraham Lincoln. The rail splitter from Illinois would grab the nomination and presidency, but by the time he arrived at the White House, 7 states had left the Union. For Lincoln, secession was not an option. The war was on. He took over a divided country. Did he actually know what he was getting into?
I don't think so, but Lincoln knew the law, and he knew the Constitution backwards and forward. And so he realized after Fort Sumter happened and that a lot of the country wasn't accepting him as president, and then he correctly diagnosed union, keep the country together, and then the abolition of slavery as the two grand causes of the Civil War.
As for Frederick Douglass, Lincoln's win was all about hope. But when he didn't immediately free the slaves and messaged appeasement in exchange for reunification, Frederick seethed.
The whole story is that progress takes patience. Douglass should have been, rightfully so, angry at the lack of progress, pushing Lincoln to move as quickly as possible. But at the same time, you have to admire and respect Lincoln's patience.
The White House looks a lot like it did back in 1860 when Abraham Lincoln was president. You could line up on that porch and hope the president would see you one-on-one. That's exactly what Frederick Douglass decided to do. He wouldn't have to wait long.
Lincoln was smitten with Douglass. He knew that he was a prophetic figure. He knew that he carried some baggage with him politically, but he wanted to meet Douglass.
After the initial meeting, a bond was formed. Lincoln released the Emancipation Proclamation. Douglass traveled the nation, recruiting blacks into the Army for the first time. The most prolific unit, the 54th Massachusetts Infantry.
One of the beauties of that recruitment efforts included his own 2 sons who served in the 54th. I was amazed at how important the American flag was. When they were being shot at, African American holding the flag doesn't want it to touch the soil because it was so important to defend our flag because it was defending our nation.
Lincoln and Douglas would meet a total of 3 times face-to-face, and together they would help Lincoln win re-election. Douglas would be a special guest at his inaugural. The Union would go on to win the war, free an entire race from slavery, and allow our nation to reunite. With so much work left to do, together, John Wilkes Booth's assassination robbed Frederick Douglass of a partner to do that work with.